I'm a mental attendant, and from the get-go in my job, I worked at a private mental office. One of our occupants was an elective quiet, which implies that he wouldn't, couldn't talk, yet there were no clinical reasons with respect to why. He had spoken before in his life and indeed appeared to be very ordinary in those days, except for being near 7 feet tall. He'd been brought up in the deep south and joined the army when he was 19, however one night he disappeared. He was announced AWOL, and in the long run he was missing or dead. After 10 years, a 7-foot-tall man strolled into a VA hospital trauma center in my part of the Midwest and said to the assistant, "I am Marion Duchesne, and I've been dead for quite some time." Those were the final words he at any point talked. He was covered with residue, and he was wearing a similar garments he'd been accounted for to be wearing the night he disappeared. His government-backed retirement number had not been utilized and he had no recognizable proof with the rest of his personal effects. Notwithstanding, they had the option to distinguish him, I surmised through fingerprints. The family was informed, yet they said they had effectively lamented their lost man and that whomever was professing to be him essentially couldn't be. They requested not to be contacted anymore. Marion paced the entire day consistently, moving his mouth that appeared as though talking or mumbling, yet no words came out. He had a frightening propensity for tossing his head back with his mouth totally open as though he were chuckling generously, however not so much as a breath could be heard. Assuming I conversed with him, he seemed to tune in, occasionally tossing his head back in that giggling copying method were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at that job, the last thing I saw was Marion, pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, I still don't know. What do you think?